images or effects laid on top of other images or effects. So for example, imagine taking 5 sheets of plastic wrap and painting a small picture on each one and then stacking the sheets on top of each other. The 5 individual pieces would become one new picture when you stack them together. And that's all that layers are. By using layers, you can add effects to an image, alter an image, or create a new one. Now to view all the layers that you have in a Photoshop image, you'll go over here to the Layers panel. You can see that it's grouped with channels and paths, and we have ours selected, so it's currently visible. If you don't see it, go up here to Window and move down to Layers. As you can see, ours has a check mark by it because we already have it open, but if you don't see that check mark, just go ahead and click on it and it will open up the Layers panel. Now by default, you start with what's called the background layer, and this is automatically created for you by Photoshop anytime you open a file. This layer will be created every time you create a new image or document, unless you create a new image with a transparent background. You can see the background layer is locked. This means that you cannot move it, however you can still paint on it or add images to it. And as you can see, the background layer is labeled and shows up here in the Layers panel. Once you've created additional layers on top of the background layer, you can delete the background layer by clicking on the layer in the Layers panel and then double-clicking on the trash can in the lower right-hand corner. So you can say yes, but we'll be using it for now, so I will undo that. Once you've created additional layers on top of the background layer, which we'll learn how to do in just a minute, you can delete the background layer by double-clicking on the Layers panel and then double-clicking on the trash can in the lower right-hand corner here. So to create a layer, it's really simple. If you want to create a new layer with nothing additional on it, you simply click the New Layer button down in this corner and it will create that layer for you. And if for some reason you didn't want to do it that way, you could also go up here to the toolbar, click Layer, New, and then add a new layer. And it'll ask you if you want to name that layer. Click OK, and that will appear for you. If you want to create a new layer with all the effects from a previous layer, start out by selecting the existing layer. Right now, the only one we have with anything on it is our background layer. And then you click and drag that down to the New Layer button. And it automatically creates a copy of that layer for you. This will contain all the effects of the existing layer. You can also turn a selection into a new layer. So first, you select the object or image that you want to turn into a new layer. So if I wanted to, I could select one of the flowers here. Then you would go up to Layer, New, Layer via Copy, or Layer New, Layer via Cut to copy or cut the selection and then paste it in a new layer. So I'm going to copy it. And then you can see that it automatically creates a new layer with just that flower on it. And if you notice what I'm doing here, if you want to move between your layers or view only a single layer at a time, just click or unclick this eye icon here, and that will show certain layers and hide others. Now you can also select layers. When you're working with individual layers, you can select them to make it easy to work on them. If you're painting or making tone adjustments, you can only work with one layer at a time. The layer you're working on is called the active layer. So right now we have layer 3 selected. That's our active layer. And the active layer appears in the title bar of the document window. If you want to move, align, apply styles, or transform layers, you can select and work on more than one layer at a time. You'll select your layers over here in the Layers panel. So to select layers, first click on your layer in the Layers panel. And if you're selecting multiple but contiguous layers, or layers that are touching each other, click on the first layer, and then hold down Shift and click on the last layer that you want to select. And that will select all of them. If you'll be selecting discontiguous layers, or layers that aren't next to each other in the panel, then you'll hold Control and then click each layer in the panel that you want to select. If you want to select all the layers, go up to Select and then All Layers, and likewise to deselect, go back to Select, deselect layers. You can also link layers together so that they maintain their relationship even if both layers aren't selected. When the layers are linked together, you can move or apply a transformation to the linked layers. This makes it a lot easier than doing one layer at a time. To link layers, you'll select the layers that you want to link in the Layers panel. So if I wanted to link layers 2 and 3, and then you'll simply click the little link icon at the bottom. You'll see once I've selected that, it shows 2 links here on each of the layers that I've selected, and this shows that those are linked together. If you want to unlink them, simply select the linked layers again, and then click the icon again, and that will unlink them. To delete a layer, simply select the layer you want to delete and click on the trash can below. It will ask you if you want to delete the layer, and then click yes as long as you're sure you want to be rid of it. You can also lock layers. When you lock a layer, you're protecting its contents. Photoshop allows you to lock layers fully or partially. A fully locked layer cannot be edited or modified as long as it's locked. For example, if you've finished working on a layer and don't want to accidentally make changes to it, you may want to lock it fully. However, you may just want to partially lock a layer that has the correct transparency and styles, but still needs to be positioned on the other layers. Now, whenever a layer is locked, a lock icon appears to the right of the layer in the Layers panel. The icon is solid if a layer is fully locked, or hollow if it's only partially locked. So if I wanted to lock this layer here, I'd click on that and then click the lock icon. You can see that that's solid, which means that it's fully locked. However, if you look at our background layer, it's partially locked. And Photoshop will always partially lock the background layer by default. Now, if you decide you only want to partially lock a layer instead of fully locking it, click on the layer that you want, and then click on one or more of the options in the Layers panel. You can choose to lock transparent pixels, which will restrict further editing to colored pixels in the layer. Or you can lock image pixels, which makes it so the layer's pixels can't be modified with the painting tools. You can lock the position, which prevents the pixels in the layer from being moved. Or once again, you can decide to lock everything. You can also merge layers if you decide that it would be easier to work on objects within the same layer. When you merge 2 or more layers, the layers that you merged become a single layer. To merge layers, you'll select the layers that you want to merge, and then right-click and choose Merge Layers. Now you can see that they've become one layer. Another thing you'll be doing is applying preset styles to a layer. And a style is simply defined as an effect that you apply to a layer. You can create your own styles or use preset styles that Photoshop provides to you. To apply a preset style to a layer, you'll select the layers that you want to apply the style to. We'll select our background copy here, and note that if you've locked that layer, you'll have to unlock it if you want to continue working on it. Now we'll need to open our Styles panel by going up to Window and clicking on Styles. You can see that opens up top here. You'll select the style to apply and then click to apply on the selected layers. And if you hover over each style, it will tell you what those are. So I think I'd like to apply the sunset sky effect. You can see that as soon as I click that button, the style is applied. Now if I want to copy that style from one layer to another, I'll select the layer that contains the style I want to copy, and then go to Layer, Layer Style, Copy Layer Style. Then I'll click on the layer I want to apply the style to, go to Layer, Layer Style, Paste Layer Style. And then you can see that it applied the same effect to my layer. Another thing you can do is fill a layer with the Paint Bucket tool, pattern, or color. So to fill a layer with the Paint Bucket tool, first you'll go over and select the foreground color in the toolbox. Click on that. This dialog box opens that gives you your colors you can choose from. So you'll click and pick a foreground color, and then you'll click OK. Next, you want to go over to your toolbox and select the Paint Bucket tool. If you go up here in the options bar, it'll ask you to choose whether you want to fill with the foreground color or with a pattern. Right now we're going to use the foreground color, but later we'll work with patterns. So click foreground. Then you'll select the blending mode and the opacity for the paint, and enter tolerance for the fill. The tolerance determines how similar the colors in the pixels must be to the pixels that you click. If you want smoother edges, click Anti-Alias, and you'll leave Contiguous unselected if you want to fill all similar pixels in the image. If you want to fill the pixels based on merged color data from all layers, check All Layers. Now that you've selected your settings, click the part of the image that you want to fill in. So as you can see here, I've chosen to use the Paint Bucket tool to apply the foreground color to my entire layer. And I've also decided that I'd like to apply the blue glass style to my layer. Now in an image or document like this where we've got multiple layers, sometimes it's easier to organize them into groups. By creating groups, you create a hierarchy of layers, and it also makes it easier to find what you're looking for when you need to edit layers. So for example, you may want to group all layers containing text together or all groups containing shapes. You can do this really easily in Photoshop. To group layers, select the first layer that you want to group and drag it to the group folder at the bottom of the layers panel. So that's this icon here, the folder. Click it there, and it automatically creates your group. And then whatever other layers you want to add to your group, simply click and drag them in, and it will add them to your group. So as you can see, we've dragged these two layers into the group. If you're not sure if they've been put in the same group, you can click this arrow here, and it will collapse everything in that group. And you can bring it back here. You can also name the group to make it easier to remember what layers it contains. Simply double click and it'll be highlighted there, and you can type in a new name. Once you've applied layer styles, you may want to work with different blending modes, opacity, and fill. The blending mode that you choose for individual layers will affect how the pixels in the selected layers blend with other pixels in the image. To make it a little easier, I'm going to start a new document here and fill that with a pattern. So I choose pattern up here, and I can decide what I want to fill that with. And I'm going to create a new layer on top of that and fill that with a color. So I've got my two layers here, and now I would like to apply a blending mode. To select a blending mode, go to the Layers panel and select your layer. I'm going to select the top layer, and here is where we choose a blending mode. You can see it gives us a lot of different options. And I'd like to blend the pattern we have in our background layer with the solid color we have in layer 1. So I'll select layer 1, go up to blending modes, and I'm going to select the lighten blending mode. So you can see right here that the blending mode affected our layers. It lightened layer 1 so that the colors and effects from the background layer are showing through. So as a reminder, this is what the background layer looks like on its own, but when we apply the blending style along with layer 1, you can see it's given us an overlay. Now we can also adjust the opacity. The opacity of a layer determines how it reveals or obscures the layer beneath it. So for example, if we decided we didn't want quite that much blue, we can bring our opacity down, and that changes the color effects. An opacity of 0 means that this layer is completely clear, but the more we move it up, the more that color comes through. Now you can see below opacity we also have fill. Fill affects the opacity of the current layer without affecting any of the layers beneath. So that changes just the single layer. Alright, now we're going to move on to creating panoramic and stacked images using layers. So I'm going to move over to this new document I've created. Using layers and auto blend, you can stitch or combine images and have smooth transitions in the final image. This can create panoramic and stacked images. Auto blend works by applying layer masks to each layer as they're needed. This masks out or covers up over or under exposed areas. However, you can only use auto blend on RGB or grayscale images. You can use auto blend to blend multiple images of a scene that has different areas in focus, or to create composite by blending multiple images of a scene, each with different illuminations, or to stitch together different images and create a panorama. So to use auto blend, the first thing you're going to do is copy and paste the images that you want to combine in one document or image. And each image should be a separate layer. So you can see I've got my two images here, my two different layers. I've got these pieces of a lizard that I would like to combine into a single image. Next, we'll use Auto Align to automatically line up the images. To do this, you first have to make sure that you have a reference layer, and that simply means a locked layer. We've got our first layer here locked, so we have our reference layer created. Next, select the layers that we want to align, and then go up to Edit, Auto Align Layers. See, this dialog box opens, and you'll select your options. Auto means that Photoshop analyzes the image and either applies a perspective or cylindrical layout. It will choose the one that will produce the best image. Perspective means that it will create a composition by using the middle image as a reference image. The rest of the images will be transformed in any way that they need so that any overlapping content is matched. Collage will allow image rotation, scale, and translation. Cylindrical means that the images will be displayed as if they were on an unfolded cylinder. The content is matched up and the reference image becomes the center of the image. And this is the best one to use if you'll be creating panoramas. Spherical will align all the images with wide fields of view. It spherically transforms all images except the reference image so that content is matched. And reposition aligns the layers and matches content but does not transform any layers. And if you need to, you can use the lens correction section to remove any lens issues. Vignette removal will remove the darker edges on images that were caused by a defective lens, and geometric distortion will fix any lens distortions such as fisheye. So for our purposes, we're just going to stick with the auto. Click OK. And you can see that it's taken our two images and aligned the points that match to create a single image. However, it's not a perfect matchup. You can see that there are some dark lines here, and it's pretty obvious where the two images were overlaid. So this is where we'll want to use our auto blend. Keep your two layers selected that you want to blend, and go up to Edit, Auto Blend Layers. It gives you two different options here. Panorama will blend the overlapping layers into a panoramic image, and the overlapping layers will tend to have some of the same content or images. Or you can stack images, which will blend the details in each corresponding area. And go ahead and leave the check mark here on Seamless Tones and Colors so that the color and tonality are adjusted for blending. So I'm going to leave it on stacked images and click OK. And it'll take a moment for that to go through. And now you can see we have a seamless image here. You don't see any of the transitions and lines that showed before on the different layers. And you can see once everything is there, we do have some extra space on the side, so it's not a perfect image. There's a variety of things you can do, such as cropping and transforming your layers. And there's other tricks that we'll learn about later in this course. But for now, we'll learn about creating and modifying text. And this is going to be one of the easiest things you'll learn how to do in Photoshop. So let's go back to our original file here. First thing you want to do is activate the layer that will contain your text. I'd like it on the background layer, so I'm going to click to make that the active layer. Now come over to our toolbox and click on the text tool. You'll see that a cursor pops up. Next we'll go up to our options bar and choose the font that we want to use. I'm going to choose something nice and simple. You'll choose the font style if you want it to be narrow, regular, italic, bold, bold italic, or black. Then you'll choose your font size. Next you'll choose if you want the font to be sharp, crisp, strong, or smooth. Choose the way you want the text to be aligned on your image, if you want it to be left aligned, center, or right aligned. I'm going to choose left aligned. Choose your font color, and then you can click on this icon here if you want to warp the text. It'll give you a number of preset styles you can choose from. So for this example, I think I want my text to be in a lower arc. You can use this icon right here to toggle between the character and paragraph panels. This panel will allow you to set indentations and to block text. It also allows for Photoshop to automatically hyphenate text when it wraps from one line to the next. So once we've got all that, to add text to your image, click on the area where you want your text to appear, and then type away. If you have errors in your text, simply backspace to correct them, or click where you see the error, and you can add changes there. If you want to modify the format, such as the type of font or to add a warp, click so that the cursor appears before the first letter of text, and then drag it across the entire portion to highlight it. Then you can change your font and the warping style. Now you can see I've got this up a little bit high, and I don't really like where it's placed. If you want to move the text, it's really easy to do that. You don't have to retype everything. Instead, make sure you have the text tool selected, select your text, and now click on the Move tool in the toolbox. And then from there, you can place that wherever you want it. And if you prefer to see a bounding box around your text to give you more options to work with it, you can click on Show Transform Controls. That gives you a bounding box. So from there, you can even adjust the size of your text, rotate it, make it larger, smaller, whatever you want to do. You get your normal transform tools if you've got that box.